If you're here, you're looking for that deeper cut of knowledge, the essential insights that let you be, and not just informed, but, well, highly effective.
Exactly.
And today, we are wrestling with a really foundational question. It's about mastery, about success. Why is it that some people can maintain this just ferocious effort toward huge, long-term goals?
Like mastering a new skill.
Exactly, like mastering a complex skill, while other people who might be just as talented, they stall out. They quit too soon.
It's the central mystery of achievement, really, and it's a mystery that's plagued, everyone. Educators, coaches, leaders for centuries.
Right, we've all seen it.
We all have. You see that person who is just gifted, they have such high potential, but they never seem to follow through. And then conversely, you see the other person, the one who starts slowly, maybe even struggles a lot. But eventually, they surpass everyone.
That's the person we're talking about today.
It is. Our dive today is all about revealing the engine behind that long-haul success.
And we are going straight to the source material that, I think it's fair to say, redefined this entire conversation globally. It's a groundbreaking research from Angela Duckworth's book, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance.
A phenomenal book.
It is. And we aren't just summarizing it. We're using its findings, but we're filtering them through this very specific lens of continuous learning, of skill acquisition. The goal is to extract that high-octane fuel for sustained effort, specifically for you, the learner.
Yeah, our mission today is explicitly tailored for you. We need to define this thing, we need to analyze it, and I think most importantly, we have to show you how to build it.
Build what exactly?
That inner mechanism, the thing that allows people to stay on track for, sometimes a decade, even when the work gets tedious or intellectually frustrating, or when it feels like failure is the only thing happening.
Okay, so let's start where she started. When Duckworth began this research, and she studied everyone, right? From students in Chicago schools to
world-class salespeople, elite athletes, and maybe most famously, the cadets in the incredibly demanding training programs at West Point.
Right. So across all those different groups, what was the one unified core conclusion she kept finding? The thing that binds all these high achievers together?
The conclusion is it's a powerful one because it completely shifts the focus away from genetics and destiny.
Okay.
Success wasn't primarily predicted by IQ or standardized test scores or even, your initial technical skill. It was predicted by something deeply psychological, something internal.
Something she eventually called grit.
Exactly. Something she formalized and, crucially, learned how to measure. Grit.
Okay, so before we unpack all the research, let's plant the flag right here. What is grit? We hear the word thrown around a lot, but in her work, it has a very precise two-part definition.
And that precision is everything. Grit is the harmonious combination of two things, passion and perseverance.
So not just one or the other.
Never just one. It's not just loving something, and it's not just working hard. It absolutely requires both. It means you care deeply for your long-term goal. That's the unwavering emotional commitment. And you possess the disciplined strength to stay with that goal for a very, very long time.
Even when it feels impossible.
Especially then. Refusing to quit even when the odds just feel completely insurmountable.
Okay, let's unpack that, starting with what I think is the biggest obstacle for people understanding grit. This idea of the talent trap.
Yes.
Duckworth's research, for instance, at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. That's a place that demands incredibly high physical and intellectual capacity. But what she found was that talent only gets you so far.
That's right. The West Point study is so often cited because the people there are, by definition, already highly talented and motivated.
These are the best of the best.
They are. They all have great SAT scores, impressive athletic records, leadership potential, and yet, during this brutally difficult summer training, a really significant number of them quit.
And here's the kicker, right? The cadets most likely to quit. They weren't the ones with the lowest test scores or the poorest physical fitness when they started.
Precisely. That's the shocking part. They found that a cadet's measurable grit score was a far, far better predictor of who would survive that training than any of their objective talent metrics.
Wow.
And that observation just it shattered the idea that talent alone is what ensures survival when things get consistently difficult. And it helped her build her foundational equation for achievement.
We should lay that out. That famous equation is really the intellectual core of this whole deep dive.
It is. So Duckworth frames achievement in two distinct steps. First, she says, talent X effort, a skill.
Okay, so talent is how fast you learn something when you try.
Exactly. Talent is how quickly your skills improve when you put in the effort, but that skill, that's just potential. It's just sitting there. You then have to take that potential and apply it over time.
And that's the second step.
That's the second step. Skill X effort, achievement.
What's so fascinating there, and what we really need to highlight for you, the listener, is that the word effort shows up twice in that equation.
It's the magic variable.
It is. So if you have tremendous natural talent, but your effort is, say, low, well, the multiplication means your skill will be low, and your eventual achievement will also be low.
But the person with low talent who puts in consistently high effort, they end up compounding their gains over time. They win.
And that repeated effort factor explains why we get so confused.
Yeah.
We see quick learners, and we think they're going to be the high achievers.
We do it all the time. Some people are just born with high natural talent. They absorb new information instantly. They understand concepts fast. They look smart from day one. They have, high potential. But if they don't engage in that consistent hard work, that sustained action, their potential just stays right where it is. It's just potential.
So the talent trap, it's not about being untalented. It's about relying too much on how easy things are at the start.
Yes, which often leads to really poor habits, because when things inevitably get hard, and they always do, the talented person often lacks the psychological machinery, the grit to push through, because frankly, they've never had to struggle before.
Which brings us to the opposite, the power of the slow learner, the one who maintains effort, the consistency advantage.
And this is so critical for anyone listening who is engaged in continuous learning, whether it's a language or data science or a musical instrument.
Let's use that specific example from her work, The Two English Learners. I think this illustrates the difference between potential and durable learning just brilliantly.
It's a perfect contrast. Okay, so you have learner one. They are brilliant, quick-witted. They pick up new grammar rules instantly. Their vocabulary retention is amazing. They sound impressive on day one.
So they feel great about their ability.
Of course. And because of that, they study, let's say, once a week. But it's a massive 4-hour marathon session. They're basically resting on their talent.
Okay, now contrast them with learner two.
Learner two struggles. They have to reread explanations multiple times. They're always forgetting basic verb conjugations. They feel frustrated. But learner two has a deep commitment to consistency.
So they show up.
They show up every single day without fail, even if it's just for 10 focused minutes.
And after 6 months, who's ahead?
After 6 months, Duckworth's findings predict a really clear result. Learner two, the one who struggled at the beginning, will have a deeper, more usable mastery of the language than the talented learner one.
And why is that?
Because consistency is the bridge. It's the only bridge between potential and achievement.
And this isn't just, a nice motivational point. There's a real, tangible, neurological reason for this.
Yeah.
We need to explain the difference between that one giant session and all those small, consistent ones.
Well, because the brain isn't a computer hard drive. Yeah. It's an organic adaptive network. It's a muscle. So when we do a massive 4-hour session, we're mostly relying on what's called storage strength. We're putting the information in. But if we don't use it frequently, its retrieval strength, our ability to pull it out and use it quickly under pressure, it just fades rapidly.
So learner one might know the grammar rule, but they can't actually use it when they're trying to speak.
Exactly. They can't access it. But learner two, practicing every day, isn't just storing the information. They are repeatedly triggering that retrieval mechanism over and over.
It's like building a path in the woods.
That's a great analogy. Each consistent 10-minute session reinforces those specific neural pathways. The science even points to physical changes, like the buildup of the myelin sheath around axons. It's like insulating a cable. Consistency literally wraps those connections in protective information, making the signal faster and more durable.
So growth comes from small, frequent signals, not one big, infrequent shock.
Precisely. We sometimes forget that learning a complex skill coding, a language, music, it is a physical act of reshaping your brain. The growth doesn't come from these big, heroic sprints. It comes from those small, relentless, daily steps.
That is the first key takeaway of grit then. Just show up daily.
Show up daily.
So if we move from that consistent effort to the mindset you need, we get to the second core pillar of grit, perseverance.
The hard part.
This is the hard part. This is that moment when you confront difficulty, you fail, and that critical inner voice tells you to stop.
Yeah.
Perseverance is just ignoring that voice.
It is the action component that separates the dreamers from the doers. And Duckworth's research shows that the ability to persevere is just. It's inextricably linked to the work of Carol Dweck on the growth mindset.
Right. You can't really talk about grit without talking about growth mindset.
You really can't. They're two sides of the same coin.
So let's quickly explain the two mindsets for the listener, because they fundamentally determine how you respond when you fail.
Okay, so first you have the fixed mindset. In this view, your intelligence and your abilities are seen as static traits. They're fixed. So if I fail, it means I am fundamentally not smart or not talented at this thing.
So failure is a judgment.
It's a final judgment on my inherent self-worth, and therefore the only logical response is to quit, to protect my ego.
Okay, and the other side?
The other side is the growth mindset. This views abilities as malleable. They can be developed through dedication and hard work. So failure is just an event. It's not an identity. A failure simply means I haven't mastered this yet.
And it gives you data.
High-value data on what strategy you need to change.
So greedy people are operating almost exclusively from that growth mindset.
Always. They view failure not as the end of the road, but just mandatory feedback along the way. Their internal response, no matter how painful the failure is simply, it's okay, I learned something valuable, and I can try again with a better strategy.
But hang on a second. It sounds easy to say, oh, failure's fine, just try again. But failure, especially public failure, I mean, the example of trying to communicate in a new language and failing, that can be genuinely humiliating. How do gritty people manage the emotional weight of that embarrassment?
And that is where emotional regulation comes in. The sources are really clear that grit isn't about not feeling shame or frustration. It's about accepting those feelings and then immediately shifting to an action-oriented response.
It's about getting back up.
It is the action of getting back up, which is so much harder than it sounds.
Okay, let's run the scenario. Imagine you, the learner, are being incredibly brave. You try to participate in a discussion using your new language skills, but you misunderstand a question, you respond inappropriately, and everyone laughs. Or maybe worse, they just look confused and move on. That feeling, that hot, embarrassing failure, it's huge.
It's massive. And the person without grit, they internalize that embarrassment. They associate the pain with the attempt itself, and they create an avoidance mechanism. Their internal voice says, I will never speak out in front of people again.
So their goal shifts. It's no longer about mastering the skill.
It's about avoiding shame.
But the person rooted in perseverance.
Yeah.
What is their internal monologue in that exact same moment?
They might feel that flash of shame, absolutely, but their brain immediately engages in strategic analysis. Why did I fail? Was it my vocabulary? Was I speaking too fast? Was it a cultural misstep? They transform the embarrassment into data.
So they don't avoid the situation next time.
No, they approach it with a modified strategy. Maybe they speak a little slower, or they consciously try to use the very phrase they struggled with before.
And that distinction, avoiding the situation versus modifying the strategy, that's the whole game. That's the difference between quitting and persevering.
It is. And this brings us to a neuro-linguistic connection we have to emphasize. We need to encourage you, the listener, to actively celebrate your mistakes.
That sounds counterintuitive. Be happy when you mess up.
Absolutely. The mistake is not the enemy. Comfort is the enemy. If you are making mistakes, it means you are actively pushing past the boundaries of what you currently know. You are in the optimal learning zone.
So if you stop making mistakes,
You've stopped challenging yourself. You're no longer growing. You're just treading water.
so every time a mistake happens, it should trigger this moment of high-value feedback for the brain. It's immediate, targeted data on exactly where the system broke down.
Exactly. And gritty people, they actively seek out failure for precisely this reason. They know it accelerates learning. They realize that enduring that temporary discomfort is literally what makes them stronger and faster and more skilled than their peers who are too afraid to even try.
Okay, so perseverance is that strategic commitment to action. But action needs fuel, which brings us to the emotional engine of grit.
Passion.
The inner fire, that deep, sustained love or fascination for what you were doing, the thing that compels you to return to the difficult, often boring work.
Passion is what ensures voluntary effort. It's what makes you invest your free time, your limited energy, your attention, even when the external reward is years away. If you have deep passion, the tediousness of daily practice doesn't feel like a chore.
It feels like a ritual.
An essential ritual, exactly.
And this is where we have to confront that common myth about passion, the lightning bolt theory. So many people quit early because they never felt that instant romantic connection to the subject they chose.
That myth is arguably the most destructive idea surrounding grit. Duckworth's research shows that truly deep, sustaining passion, it almost never arrives like love at first sight.
And if it does, it's usually not real.
If it starts that way, it's usually just a fleeting fascination. True passion, the kind that lasts for decades, it grows slowly. It's cultivated through a structured process.
Okay, we need to detail this process of growing passion because it's so actionable. The sources suggest there are, 4 sequential stages for passion to mature into real grit?
That's right, and the hierarchy is crucial for you, the learner. It doesn't start with love, it starts with interest.
Just curiosity.
Just curiosity. You have to find something that genuinely captures your initial curiosity, something you want to explore more deeply. Maybe you start learning to code because you need a new job, but you find the logic puzzles involved are actually really satisfying.
Okay, so after interest comes.
Practice. You can't just think about your interest, you have to engage with it. And as you practice and you gain competence, even small victories, that interest deepens because, competence feels good.
It feels good to be good at something.
Exactly. And that feeling fuels more practice. The third stage is the search for purpose.
Okay, this feels like a big shift.
It is. You have to ask, why is the skill important not just for me, but for others? When you connect your skill to a broader impact, the interest finally transitions into a true, sustaining passion.
And the final stage.
The final stage is hope, which is really the perseverance component we talked about earlier, that belief that your effort will eventually yield results. So this model tells us, if you don't feel passion today, you don't quit.
You do what?
You increase your practice, and you search for your purpose.
And this structure, it lets us address a really critical challenge.
What about fields where the work is just inherently dry? I'm thinking of advanced statistical analysis or corporate regulatory compliance. If the job is fundamentally boring, does grit still apply? Or should that person just quit if they don't feel true love?
That is the hard question, isn't it? If passion is about internal enjoyment, how can we be gritty about things we objectively dislike?
Right.
And this is exactly why the distinction between passion and purpose is so vital, Duckworth says. Passion is about what you love. Purpose is about what you give.
In those inherently dry fields, grit requires aligning that dry task with a profound purpose. The corporate lawyer might hate reviewing contracts page after page, but they fiercely love protecting their clients' rights. Or ensuring legal integrity. That's a massive external contribution.
So purpose acts as the ultimate external anchor. It gives you energy when that internal passion fades because you realize the sacrifice of your effort is serving something larger than your immediate discomfort.
Exactly. When you're tired, you don't ask, do I feel excited about this grammar exercise? No. You ask, why did I start learning this in the first place?
And the answer better be good.
The answer has to be strong enough to pull you back. Maybe it's providing a better life for your family. Maybe it's the ambition to contribute innovative ideas in your field on a global scale.
The sources really emphasize connecting purpose to others. When you master a skill, it opens up this ability to share ideas, to teach, to motivate, to inspire. So your learning journey is never truly solitary.
It's inherently beneficial to the community you engage with. And this leads to a really actionable strategy. If you're struggling with a complex project today, stop trying to generate internal excitement. It won't work. Instead, spend 5 minutes just articulating who, besides yourself, benefits from you finishing this project. That purpose will often reignite the motivation you need.
Okay, so we have the emotional fire, that's passion and purpose, and we have the foundational mindset, which is perseverance. Now let's drill down into the how, the actual mechanics of practice, because Duckworth's research makes a really strong point here. Gritty people don't just practice a lot.
They practice deliberately.
And that's the difference maker.
It's the difference between simply putting in your 10,000 hours and actually achieving mastery. Deliberate practice, as it's defined in the source material, is practice with care, with focus, and critically, with intent.
We should define that by contrasting it with, with what most of us do, which is passive practice.
Right.
If I'm learning a new language, what's the difference between just mindlessly reading a textbook chapter and engaging in deliberate practice?
Okay, so passive practice is repetition without feedback or focused intent. You're reading words, you're listening to a podcast while you're folding laundry, or you're completing 20 exercises that are all way too easy for you.
It feels like work, but it's not actually challenging you.
Exactly. It doesn't challenge your current ability. Deliberate practice, on the other hand, is targeted, and frankly, it's painful. It requires you to be ruthlessly honest about your current weaknesses and focus your entire session on improving only that specific weakness.
usually with some kind of feedback loop.
Yes, an immediate feedback loop. A perfect example for the learner. Don't spend an hour completing 20 passive exercises you know you can ace. That's a waste of time. Instead, identify the one specific grammatical structure, let's say it's the subjunctive mood, that you fail at 80% of the time.
The thing you dread.
The thing you dread. Now, dedicate 30 focused minutes to creating and practicing targeted retrieval cues for only that specific difficulty. That is deliberate, focused, high-value work.
Or in coding, it's not just writing lines of code. It's identifying the one specific function that keeps breaking and spending an hour just refactoring that one small section until it is mathematically elegant and fully optimized.
You are seeking out the pain point.
Right.
The structure of deliberate practice is always the same. Set a goal just beyond your current capability. Focus intensely for a short burst like 30 to 60 minutes. Get immediate objective feedback. Reflect on what went wrong and then repeat with adjustments.
This is why it's so exhausting.
It's exhausting because it forces you to operate at the very edge of your knowledge.
And we have to acknowledge that this kind of focused, deliberate practice can be, well, it can be boring.
Yeah.
And it often doesn't show those quick, satisfying results, which demands a huge amount of patience.
It does, which brings us back to the seed and the tree analogy.
Explain that.
It's the perfect antidote to our instant gratification mindset. When you water a tiny seed every day, that's your daily 10 minutes of deliberate practice, you see no visible change for weeks, maybe even months. It's monotonous. You feel like the effort is completely wasted.
But the growth is happening beneath the surface.
Exactly. It's strengthening the roots, slowly building the scaffolding of the skill. Your English proficiency, your coding mastery, your musical repertoire, that is the strong tree that eventually grows.
Gritty people they trust the process.
They trust that consistency, even when it's invisible, is accumulating. They understand that the compounding effect of these small, focused actions over months dramatically outweighs the occasional heroic effort.
And this need for patience ties directly into endurance and what the source material calls the long road metaphor. Because the vast majority of people start strong, right? They're full of enthusiasm for the new skill.
And then they quit. Usually in that crucial 6 to 12-week period when the novelty wears off and the learning curve flattens out.
Learning is a long road.
It's not a 100-meter dash. It's a marathon that stretches for years. You walk slowly, step by consistent step. And crucially, the sources emphasize that the road is neither straight nor is it always easy.
You're going to hit plateaus.
You will. Some days are difficult. It feels like it's raining, you're unwell, the concept just won't click. Other days are easy and sunny and you feel brilliant.
So what's the secret?
The secret of grit isn't about maintaining maximum speed. It's about staying on the road. The goal is simply not to quit. Gritty people recognize that plateaus are often just periods of deep internal restructuring before the next surge of growth, and they endure them.
And this leads to a really critical distinction we have to internalize. If you are tired, the advice is not to quit. It's to rest.
Such a vital difference. Quitting is permanent. It yields zero return on all the effort you've invested. Resting is temporary. It allows for recovery and an eventual return to the task. The gritty person understands the difference between fatigue and abandonment.
And we see this powerful endurance in that specific story of the soldier at West Point. Such a great demonstration of multi-year perseverance against high-stakes failure.
It's incredible. This soldier, he failed the crucial physical and academic examinations not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Wow. I mean, by any conventional measure, the system was telling him he was unfit for service. Most people would have just taken the exit door. They'd believe they'd hit their ceiling.
But the gritty soldier, he studied harder, he adjusted his training, he used the feedback from his failures, and he trained again for that one final opportunity. And he eventually passed. And he excelled.
So it's not a story about raw talent.
Not at all. It's a story about the absolute refusal to accept a temporary defeat as a permanent definition of who you are.
And Duckworth found the same thing with students, right? The ones who initially struggled but just kept at it.
They eventually surpassed their more talented peers. Their sustained, gritty effort is what defined the master at the end, not the novice at the start.
Which brings us to what might be the most empowering conclusion of all of this. The idea that grit is not a fixed trait.
No, you are not just born gritty or ungritty.
It's not in your DNA.
Not at all. It can grow like a muscle through intentional daily effort. And that gives us a practical blueprint for change.
Okay, if we could build it, we need the architectural plans. The author laid out a clear 4-step framework for cultivating grit that really moves it from a philosophy to daily action. Let's turn those steps into instructions.
Okay. Step 1. Find what you love. That's interest. And this requires conscious exploration. Don't just assume your passion is preordained. Try new things.
But what if you have too many interests?
That's the troubleshooting point. If you have 5 fleeting interests, you have to be ruthless and prioritize. Grit demands commitment to a single top-level goal, so you choose the one interest that sustains your curiosity even when the task itself is difficult.
Okay, step 1 is interest. Step 2.
Step 2, practice every day. That's deliberate practice. Remember the consistency advantage. It is the consistency, even for just 10 focused minutes, that builds those durable neural pathways.
So this means blocking out non-negotiable time.
Non-negotiable time, even if it's small, and dedicating it to focused work on your weaknesses.
Got it. Step 3.
Step 3, remember your purpose. This is your anchor. Because when the passion dips, and it will dip, you have to have a strong external reason to fall back on.
What do?
You regularly ask yourself, who benefits from my continued effort? Write that purpose down.
Finally, step 4.
Step 4, don't give up, which is really hope in action. If you are tired, rest, but you must always commit to the return. The willingness to come back after you fall is the ultimate measure of grit.
And this builds your belief in yourself.
It builds your self-efficacy, the belief that you can handle the tough times. The sources stress that these small daily actions, actively listening, writing a few sentences, repeating difficult words, they're not just cognitive exercises.
They're training the heart.
They are training the heart, building that psychological muscle for endurance. Every time you choose to come back, you are strengthening your long-term commitment system over your short-term desire for gratification.
And this entire framework, it requires a constant supply of energy. Which brings us to the final indispensable ingredient, hope. How does Duckworth define hope in the context of persistence?
Hope is the active belief that your efforts matter and that you can influence your future. This is what psychologists call learned optimism. People with high grit maintain the outlook that failure is a challenge they can overcome.
Rather than a permanent indictment of their ability.
Exactly. Hope, then, isn't passive wishing. The source defines hope as an action.
An action.
Absolutely. Hope is that forward-leaning posture after a setback. It's saying, I fell, I was embarrassed, but I believe I can get better, so I will try it again tomorrow. Every decision to continue after a moment of difficulty is a demonstration of hope.
So it's a self-reinforcing cycle.
It is. Persistence builds the evidence for hope, and hope fuels more persistence.
This is such a critical psychological shift for you, the learner. If you feel defeated today, don't fall into that spiral of self-criticism. Use the gritty phrase.
The final instruction, when you are facing difficulty today, whether you failed to understand a new concept or you made a visible mistake, is to simply say to yourself, it's okay, I'll try again tomorrow.
That's it?
That's it. That one phrase embodies the entire mechanism we've discussed. It acknowledges the setback, it rejects the fixed mindset, and it commits to the consistent, hopeful action of perseverance.
That was a truly comprehensive deep dive into the architecture of sustained success. So, to summarize for you, the learner, the formula for grit is clear. It's passion, anchored by purpose, combined with the perseverance of consistent, deliberate effort.
All maintained by the action of hope.
And this mechanism applies universally, right? This isn't just about language learning.
Not at all. It is the truth for music, for running a business, for navigating life's most difficult personal challenges. The successful individual practices deliberately every day, has a strong, anchoring purpose, refuses to accept temporary failure as permanent, and always maintains the hope that their effort will matter.
So you don't need to be the most talented person in the room today. And you certainly don't need to be perfect. You just need to possess the willingness to show up tomorrow with a strategy built on learning from today's mistakes.
The raw potential for grit is already inside you. The only requirement is to use it daily.
And as you reflect tonight on what we've talked about, I encourage you to consider the nature of your exhaustion.
Yes. When you feel tired and you're tempted to quit, ask yourself that crucial question. Is this physical fatigue that demands legitimate rest and recovery? Or is this a psychological loss of purpose that requires me to renew my commitment and recall my larger goal?
Using that reflection will determine whether you quit or you return.
It determines everything.
A truly practical lens for self-assessment. Remember the simplicity of this whole approach. When you wake up tomorrow and you start your practice, internalize that final piece of advice straight from the core of the source material. Look at the mirror, look at the task ahead and say, I have grit.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.